Good afternoon. We are now live.
Good afternoon. I'm Vincent Garnier, the Director General of the FTTH Council Europe. It's my pleasure to welcome you on this webinar, part of the series of sessions that the FTTH Council is organizing. The topic today is why your GIS isn't enough, transforming field data into actionable insights. And this content is delivered to you by a member of the FTTH Council Europe, the company IQGeo, and we thank them very much for providing their expertise and sharing their insights to you today. So without further ado, I will bring you through some housekeeping items. If we can move to the next slide, please. A few words to introduce the FTTH Council Europe for those who are not familiar with our organization. We started a bit more than 20 years ago with the mission of promoting full fiber network as the most future-proof and sustainable access network technology. And as an association, we now have more than 170 members with operators representing the full value chain around fiber networks, but also operators, investors, and association and consultant. The whole ecosystem around fiber is part of our membership. We have a variety of activity like advocacy, development of content, but also, and that's the case today, organizing online and offline events like this webinar series, but also our in-person conferences and congress. So what is going to happen today? It's a 60-minute webinar, and on the next slides, I'll give you a very basic description of the key housekeeping item. The session will be recorded. So we will share with you the replay, a link to the replay. There will also be a PDF with the slide deck, which will be used today. Since you've joined this session, you will also receive further notification for the next edition of our webinar series or any other event that the FTTH Council is organizing. Of course, you can ask questions to our panelists. You cannot do that live, but you can record your question in the question box you can access via the on the platform itself. In the control panel, you will see a question box. Don't hesitate to ask your question. We have scheduled some time to address, hopefully most of them at the end of the session. And in case your question wouldn't be addressed, I'm sure that our panelists will follow up individually to make sure that you get the necessary reply to your questions. So with that, let me give you a bit more information about the topic of today. At the FTTH Council, we look at fiber deployment, fiber adoption, and how do we maximize the benefit of fiber. What this session is going to focus on is in the category of what I would say, how to use smart tools, smart system, helping to drive operational excellence and customer satisfaction ultimately for operators, whether it's for greenfield deployment or maintenance of network. Operational excellence increasingly requires very smart tools, systems, services, and I think this is what this session will be about, talking about how do we connect a back office GIS system and real-time field operation. How do we leverage AI-powered mobile devices and tools, and all that driving service quality, speed, first-time right operation, and ultimately return on investment. So I would like to introduce the two speakers, both of them working for IQGeo. James Whitley, he's head of product management, and Anthony Nasser is customer success manager. And I will immediately hand over to James to bring us through the next slides. James, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much, Vincent, and good afternoon, good morning, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us on this webinar today. As Vincent said, I'm the head of the product management team, and at different points through the session, I'll be handing over as well to Anthony to run you through some real-life scenarios and demonstrations of our capability. So, IQGeo, just to 2 slides just to give you a flavour of who we are and what we do. So our mission is all around supporting building better networks. So providing that support across the network lifecycle from design, build, monetizing that network, and ultimately operating that. So we're building out that capability to be able to support you across different aspects of the lifecycle. And today, clearly, we'll be focusing on where we're talking about from an operate perspective, primarily being able to get data out into the field in an effective and efficient way. So IQGeo, we've been around for a while, and we have over 500 customers now, and a significant number of users every day using our solution. We've been growing recently as well, and now we're a company of over 350 people spread around the world, as you can see there, with offices on all the continents. And just from a sort of big picture perspective, 29 of the top 50 North American telecoms companies use our solutions in a variety of different ways to meet their business objectives. So enough about us. What's the problem that we're talking about today? So one of the challenges that we very commonly see is that most mobile applications, and by mobile I mean obviously taking data out into the field, making it available on some sort of mobile device, could be a laptop, could be a tablet, could be a smartphone, to manage the telecoms networks that you are all operating out in the field. They're often kind of bolt-ons, appendages to your existing GIS. Typically, that means functionality is often somewhat limited in comparison to the desktop application that the office teams are using. And that in turn results in some fairly costly overheads to both deploy those capabilities and in turn manage them. So in a nutshell, that's the problem. And we see, if we look a little bit deeper, we see sort of 5 operational challenges that translates into. And we'll step through each of these challenges in turn, so I won't go through them in detail here. But the takeaway from that is that those challenges collectively lead to higher operational costs that can often impact rollout times, and ultimately end up in poor customer experiences as well. So, and then from an internal team perspective, teams are struggling with insufficient information, insufficient data, and so it's very hard for teams to be effective and to scale, particularly in today's highly competitive environment. So we believe our solution, which is purpose-built for the field, providing those capabilities that address some of those challenges, is one way of tackling some of those challenges. So let's step into each of those in turn and give you a bit more depth of what we mean when we're talking about some of these issues. Before we jump into that, let's look at what you guys think is the sort of highest priority from those challenges. So I think Vincent will activate the poll and give you an opportunity to share your thoughts in the poll.
Absolutely, John. And I think you should see the opportunity to vote appearing on your screen. And I can see that many of you are already responding. I need to keep you waiting a little bit while now probably 25% of the audience has voted. So things are still a little bit unstable in terms of result. I can't really predict which answer will win. I think we're getting close to half of the respondent now, maybe an extra seconds for those of you who want to participate in this fantastic poll. I think that we have now materialization of what the majority most probably think. So I'll hand the poll and share the result. John, yeah, we have a clear majority for inconsistent field data quality as being a key challenge. Disconnected tool is also is coming second with quite some difference. So those are the key elements which the respondent have highlighted.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks very much, Vincent. Yeah, and I think that we'll see as we go through that ties to that. And perhaps the extensive onboarding one, maybe perhaps folks will recognize that challenge when I describe it in a little bit more detail as we get to that one as well. And I think field data quality and the lack of consistency there is clearly a key thing that we very much recognize as well, and I'll talk about that at that point, and Anthony will actually give you a little demonstration of how that works. So let's talk about disconnected tools. I think that was a key thing. So what we typically see, and I'm sure based on the poll results is quite familiar to a number of you, is that you're experiencing multiple applications and systems often results in data being siloed. In the attempt to kind of combine those together, those integrations are often costly and can be quite fragile as well. And in that process, it can result in duplicated data, which duplication can often result in errors. And ultimately, that translates into the fact that the GIS records are often out of sync with what is actually the reality. So from a best practice point of view, the approach really is to have more of a unified platform from a field perspective. So one application and one experience for the field users, drawing data seamlessly integrated from both the GIS, but perhaps other operational systems, workforce management systems, pulling that together into a single environment such that the field user is able to take those information presented in a single user interface and then be able to push those changes back. And that provides that single source of truth for the field operations teams to allow them to capture information once and share it back instantly to other systems as well. And that all really results in data harmony. So it's one source of information and one system from a field point of view that can push all of that back. Now, we're obviously sensible enough to recognize that system landscapes are existing and complex. So we're not talking about throwing everything out and replacing that. We're talking about being able to provide that kind of single pane of glass, that single source of truth from a field engineer's perspective, and then building those integrations, be able to share that information back in a reliable, repeatable way from one place rather than lots of separated things where you end up then with multiple sources of information, which creates that confusion and duplication and out of sync. So that's disconnected tools. We also see another challenge around limited field access. So it's not totally uncommon for field engineers to not have actually any access to information about the network and data about that. That's something that is still surprisingly common in a number of places. Maybe not so much in Europe, but certainly in other parts of the world, particularly, for example, Asia Pacific, that's definitely the case. And even surprisingly, sometimes in North America as well. It often depends upon the maturity of the operator and what's been, the priority. Now, sometimes printed maps are available and the inevitable spreadsheet that goes along with them, and of course that always opens up the possibility to create errors and changes to the data, which reduces the quality of the information. Again, back to that inconsistency of data quality. And that also can inefficient processes there delays the updates getting from the field back into the office, and that can often slow decision-making processes. And I'm sure we've probably all seen the experiences of a sort of pile of as-built updates sitting either digitally sitting somewhere in an inbox or in a pile of paper on the designer's desk, waiting to be able to update those. And in that scenario, it's very difficult then for the teams in the office to actually have that visibility into what's been done in the field so that they can make appropriate decisions. So that lack of awareness of what the real state of the network is out in the field can then impact response to outages, response to other events, even creating fallout in customer connection scenarios as well, as if the provisioning isn't aware of a fit change at the physical level of the network, then that's going to have an impact. So we believe that from a best practice point of view, being able to provide access for field teams to the data about the network, giving them complete access to that network information. And clearly we're talking about the GIS, so this is the physical network inventory that we're primarily focusing on. Being able to provide connected workflows that then allow you to eliminate the paper or electronic paper within the workflows, and driving those updates from the field where the people are actually understanding exactly the situation on the ground and are able to capture that and share that back to the teams in the office, rather than the teams in the office having to maybe infer or guess that. They can actually capture that directly from the source there, which gives everyone that operational transparency. So everyone's operating off the same view of the network, and the upstream processes are operating against that same view of the network as well. So being able to have that clear visibility in your GIS, which I'm sure is integrated to a number of other operational systems that support different parts of the value life cycle, is very important, that they're all working from a single consistent view. And that translates from a network status perspective as well. You're able to understand the sort of real-time view of where things are. You're not relying on having to update information on working out what the current connectivity is at a splice because there's been some outage that was rectified a while ago, and now that connectivity has changed. Having that visibility and understanding is very important. I know in the poll, offline access didn't rate that highly, and I think obviously in maybe the majority of the audience operating in Europe, where we're lucky to have exceptionally good connectivity, I think there's a couple of aspects to consider there. The first is that in certain other regions of the world, there obviously isn't such great connectivity. If we think about sub-Saharan Africa, for example, even some of the more rural areas of North America, connectivity is still very much an issue. We've got customers who've attempted to use various services from low Earth orbit satellites that just don't quite provide the reliability that's needed to operate online. And I think the other aspect is when we think about this from a deployment of fibre into rural areas, which is clearly the sort of last push that we need to get through to get that ubiquitous fibre access. Rural areas are now the next major target. All the high volume urban is pretty much covered, and in those areas then that connectivity is often a little bit more challenging, and that lack of connectivity can disrupt field operations. It means that work can often be delayed, or worse, in fact actually just simply lost. It just sort of evaporates in the ether, and sometimes those offline workarounds can add complexity. So and that complexity can result in records going stale while things are waiting to upload. So our perspective is that best practice is to have a true offline mode. So this really is all about providing access to the full capability of the platform that you're using when you're completely offline. So not just sort of a simplified cut down version of the application, but full capability. And that information is captured and works. The data is stored locally, can be edited, updated, and then shared back automatically when connectivity is restored. And that kind of, from our perspective, that's within the sort of DNA of our application. We've designed this from the ground up to be a native offline solution. So we're not just caching a little bit of information where the user is currently located. We're being able to provide complete offline coverage, and that's often because we've been providing support in our utility line of business in outage situations, in storm scenarios. So obviously there, in that sort of disaster recovery situation, you can't rely on connectivity at all. So being able to have that offline view of the network is very important. But clearly you want to be able to get those updates pushed back as quickly and as seamlessly as possible to the network, and also receive those changes back as the field user as well. So that synchronization process, very seamless and appropriate for the nature of the data that's being synchronized. So there's a difference between sort of operational data that may change a bit more frequently, a bit faster, and network data that's on a slower cycle in terms of the update frequency. So there's some of the challenges that we see from an offline capability as well. I think at this point I'll pause. I'll hand over to Anthony, who will just run us through a view of what our capabilities look like in that regard. So I'll press play, Anthony, and over to you.
Thank you, James. So we're starting with a view of IQGeo's network manager and network footprint. We're going to zoom in to a customer location. We see a wall box here and an ONT with the first port that is connected to a drop cable. We see a circuit, so the circuit represents a service, either reserved or active, which we can zoom to and can highlight the optical path, as you can see from the OLT to the ONT. Now going back to the ONT, we can do an upstream trace to inspect the details of that optical path, going through the equipment and splices or connections along the way, as you can see. Switching to the schematic view, we are able to navigate through the optical path dynamically and via the map. So starting from our hub and then switching outside to the OSP part, from the different cables to the different structures that the light traverses essentially in order to reach the customer at the ONT. So you can see all the different details, of course, in the trace, all the way up to the customer location. Now, going back and expanding a bit on the Google Street View, you can see the asset that is located in the GIS map is also presented through a Google Street View, where you can see different details of that asset in the field. And then into the actual user interface, where we can pull up quickly a connectivity report to see how that pole is serving customers on each port and how the services that are active are being represented. Now we switch to our Anywhere mobile application. And first we hover over to see that we are completely offline without internet access. And then we're going to see through the same UI and the same network footprint. We're going to select here a multi-dwelling unit. You can see the different elements within it, different floors, different rooms for customers, and ONTs. So again, we're selecting a service here on an ONT. You can see it's being served through which OLT. We can zoom in and to the optical path of that service. We're going to again launch an upstream trace and inspect the results of all the different connections, splices, and fiber cables that are used for that optical path. We launch again the schematic view, and through that interface of the schematic view, we can do the same as walkout or dynamic walking of the schematic by selecting each and every element that constitute the optical path. So switching from structures to cables, etc., all the way from the hub up until the customer connection, the ONT. Then, of course, going back to the MDU itself, we can pull another connectivity report, which shows us how the different customers are connected and the different services are established in this UI. So to quickly end with the same UI, with the same functionality, offline, but completely network connected, that's what we call native mobility. And with this, I will pass it back to you, James.
All right, brilliant. Thank you very much, Anthony. So I think you can see there that that ability to transition for the field user seamlessly from working online, as you can see with Street View, and then switch to offline mode. That will happen automatically if connectivity is not present. So that's that seamless transition, the full capability being available. So point on the poll that raised the highest score was around inconsistent field data quality, and we definitely recognise this. So challenges to do with manual data entry, the lack of not using capabilities that are available now to be able to validate both the work that's done and the data that's captured. Changes that just aren't verified. So changes are going into the GIS and they're not being verified. So therefore, we're not aware if they are correct or not. And that is in turn reducing trust in those records, which obviously, as we talked about in previous challenges, impacts operational efficiencies. And ultimately, that digital twin that we're trying to capture and maintain is degrading over time. I like to talk about it as data entropy. It's tending to chaos unless we put some controls in place to manage that. So the sort of best practice approaches that can be taken there, you can obviously optimize for the field experience to enabling that right first time data input. But I think a key area that we're seeing increasing prominence and capability within the market is using AI-powered computer vision solutions to validate the quality of the work that's being done. And Vincent mentioned IQGeo and Deepomatic earlier in the presentation, and we're in the middle of an acquisition process with Deepomatic to bring that capability into our environment, but it's also available clearly as independently from the rest of our portfolio. And that really does give you the ability to be able to just simply use a smartphone to allow the field engineer to take a photo of the work, or multiple photos most likely, of the work that he's been doing, get real-time feedback on that work to make sure it has been done correctly right first time, and then be able to share the data that's extracted from that with the GIS. And that really is a very important aspect if you consider the thought where each time an engineer touches the network, if they capture a photo series of photos, and there's a link with the inventory, you've got then the ability to validate what's actually in the inventory versus what's actually in the field, and then take appropriate action if there's a discrepancy between the two that is indicated. So we see that as being an incredibly powerful approach moving forward as well. So that's the sort of the challenge that we see there, and I think Anthony's going to jump back on and give you a quick view of how that looks integrated into the IQGeo environment as an example.
Thank you, James. So we're starting here with a view of IQGeo's workflow manager. We can see there's a list of customer connection tasks or tickets that are available. I am able to filter for as a field tag for what is assigned to me, and you can see there's a subset of tickets that are assigned. I will zoom into one of them in the map. I will check the details, the address, and I can start my work on that ticket. So once I'm editing my ticket, I will have the UI present me with all the different options and configurations that were done to submit that ticket, and especially the integration with the Deepomatic. So we move into the task list that is configured for this demo. We're starting with the cabinet connection for this customer connection. So of course, for this demo, we are not taking a live picture, but we are uploading one. As you can see, the AI is doing the analysis. Since this picture has been used before, we see that one of the check is flagged as being wrong, and we see the report of the check, the AI validation. So the reference of the cabinet is picked, and we can continue with our work. Now going to the splice box, so the actual customer connection, and we're going to upload a picture of the connection work. So after the field tech has done the connection work and established it for the customer, we upload it. We see the AI doing its analysis, and it will provide us again with a report. We notice here that we have some coiling errors that are reported. So with the business logic configured, this will not block the completion of the task. However, it will be flagged for the back office for review. Now, continuing to the actual validation of the connection. So through measurements, we're going to check uh, with a power meter and upload the picture of that measurement. And as you can see, the results of the power meter, the readings are pulled up from wavelengths to attenuation, and a validation is done against them. So we're able to finish with this the tasks to 100%, go back to Workflow Manager, and then through the ticket interface, you can see that all the read-only fields have been updated through the interface, attenuation wavelengths. I'm able to complete my task and update my ticket, and those updates will trigger, of course, the update of the ticket. So with this short demo, we've shown how the integration between IQGeo, or a flavor of the integration between IQGeo and Deepomatic, is able to streamline fieldwork validation while ensuring quality. And with this, I will pass it again to you, James.
All right, brilliant. Thanks very much, Anthony. Yeah, and that's obviously is.
And maybe, James, if I may interrupt for 1 second, just to quick reminder to everyone that you can ask questions. There are already questions coming in the list, but if you wish to use the question box, do not hesitate. We will certainly have time to address them. Sorry, James.
Brilliant. Thank you, Vincent. Yeah. No problem. That's a great reminder for the audience. Thanks very much. Yeah, so Anthony was saying that this is how we've integrated with Deepomatic, but this is very easy through extensive APIs to be able to integrate into existing systems, whether that's a field service management, workflow management solution, which is very common, or indeed to other GISs, providing they've got that capability to be able to plug that in as well. So that opportunity to be able to validate that the work is being done right first time, and then take advantage of that, as you saw, the ability to pull data out of that photo and automatically push that back to an inventory, we believe will make a significant difference going forwards. And now here's the one that no one thought was a particular challenge. Perhaps that's interesting, but maybe we didn't express particularly well in the question response. So what we're talking about here is really around getting the field users on board. We've certainly seen situations where adoption has been slow because training has been complex, that there's often resistance from field teams because they just don't want to change the tools they've got, or indeed, being able to actually be successful requires more support than was anticipated from IT, and sometimes ultimately the actual rollout sometimes of complex nature. If you remember back to some of the early challenges that we talked about, some of that complexity can actually just end up grinding the deployment of these things to a halt. So we believe from a best practice point of view that having an intuitive interface that makes it easier and faster to get up to speed. Typically, it's less than a day's training for users to be able to get up to speed with the workflows, and that's primarily because we look at taking a very much role-based design perspective. So through configuration, being able to tailor that interface that Anthony was demonstrating, being able to tailor that to your specific persona. So you may have multiple different applications, all based on the same technology, all using exactly the same framework and everything, but just configured different for different user communities and different user groups. So they've got that simplified view of the world that allows them to really focus on what their particular role and what their goals are. The deployment, making that simple as possible from an IT perspective, working with mobile data management solutions, that kind of thing. That's also the sorts of things that just streamline that process, and clearly having capability that has been built both for the office but also for the field as well, to provide that tap-friendly interface as well. So that was what we were addressing from an onboarding perspective, and we do see that as a challenge, but clearly it's not as significant as some of the other challenges that we highlighted earlier. So I just wanted to then a couple of examples of customers who are taking advantage of the IQGeo solutions to help with their operations. So Cox, a primary multi-service operator in North America, and they've been using our solutions for a long time now. Small World is their database of record, their GIS, and the data is then shared with IQGeo, and that's then presented to over 3,000 field techs who use IQGeo to be able to then understand the network and perform various network-related operations on that. Just some basic statistics: 27 minutes per day per tech, which you can do the maths yourselves. That's a fairly significant time saving across that organization. And operationally, that meant that for certain scenarios, the mean time to repair was reduced by 5%. So not insignificant savings when you multiply that up across the size of Cox's customer base. A slightly different perspective is Brightspeed. These guys are rolling out a large scale fiber deployment in North America. They were challenged with a lot of sort of older systems that they inherited. Different teams had different solutions. In fact, just getting access to data in the field was a real challenge, as I highlighted earlier in the presentation. And the sort of system integrations that were sort of being required, and then being able to translate that information, present that in an interface to the field engineers. So the overall is the design and build process, clearly. So we've been able to provide some significant savings in terms of a 33% reduction from an engineering cost point of view. But I think one of the important things there is the time to market. So that's 3 to 4 times faster, and that's because they've adopted a fully digital process. And so the field teams, both from a survey and as-built update perspective, are utilising IQGeo out in the field to capture those changes in a very streamlined way, in collaboration with the back office staff as well, who are then processing those changes that the field teams have made to be able to ensure that the records are up to date and reflect the current state of the inventory. And from a network build out point of view, that's reflected in the status of the construction. So it's giving the organisation a real-time view of as construction progresses, kind of rather than waiting for kind of either the end of the month or end of a big chunk of work. Using that capability that Anthony was presenting, Workflow Manager, a ticket-based interface that you can obviously use to be able to reflect progress through construction as the status of tickets changes. You're getting that feedback and that visibility. And again, that all works online or offline, and giving you that seamless integration. So that's just a couple of examples. So just overall, just to sort of bring it all back together, our solution and our value proposition is around empowering your field teams to be able to work anytime, anywhere, whether they're online or offline. And that native mobility solution connected to your system of record gives you that flexibility in that approach. So we believe that unified platform, integrating that computer vision approach to provide that, tackle that problem of data quality, the fact that you can synchronize that information in as seamlessly as possible, and being able to scale that solution and focus on simplicity. We believe that collection of benefits really does give you that value that is needed to justify the return on investment. And at the quote there at the bottom, that's from one of our field users. As you can see, loves using IQGeo on the iPad in the field, makes taking and attaching pictures very easy. So that was just one particular part of the field users process that they had to follow, and clearly that just made life much easier for them. Just take the photo, it's automatically attached to the asset in question, move on, and so that was much simpler for them to deal with. So if you want to learn a little bit more, we'll be at the FTTH Council's Central Eastern European Congress. That will be in Warsaw on early October. We'd love to see you there and talk more, and obviously happy to discuss further as well at other opportunities. And I think we're good for time, so I'll pause and say thanks very much. But if you've got some questions, Anthony, I'd be more than
I'm
happy
sure there are a lot of
to
questions, John, and Anthony, maybe you can also come online to address some of them. Thank you so much, both of you. Quite a few questions coming in the question box, and please feel free to ask more because we have a little bit of time we can dedicate to this Q&A section of the webinar. You were mentioning iPad and video taking. Steve, I have a first question from Everton. Is image analysis offline too?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I kind of knew someone was going to ask that. So yes, that is possible. So the Deepomatic capability is able to work offline and then be able to capture the images, do the processing locally, and then obviously the result is stored as well. And so you can get that real-time feedback to the field engineer. Yeah. I mean, what we showed was an online one, but yeah, it is available offline. That's correct.
Okay, another question from Johan. Is there a possibility to establish an integration between IQGeo and ITSM to enable automatic linking of installation tickets?
Yeah, I think that's obviously you have to understand the detail and the more detailed requirements. Broadly, yes. So what Anthony presented second time around in that video is a capability that we refer to as workflow manager, and that allows you to create and manage tickets within the IQGeo environment. So just off the top of my head, a simple approach there would be through our APIs. You'd be able to create tickets that match the tickets in the, let's say, the parent system. The field user would interact with those tickets in the IQGeo context, and then as the changes are made, those updates are pushed back to the parent system. And that's actually quite a common scenario that we use in our utilities line of business, where we're integrating with outage management systems which are very ticket driven, and we use the ticket as the currency of integration. So yeah, that's certainly something that's possible.
Okay. And are there limitations on what technicians can view or edit offline?
Anthony, do you want to?
Yeah, I can take this one. So through the UI, as you've seen, you have access to all the network assets. You can look at them, you can inspect them, you can edit them. This is by default. Now, of course, with configuration, an admin, for instance, can supply with different roles of technicians in the field with different capabilities. So let's say limiting specific access or limiting specific edit capabilities. So it all depends on the business logic that an operator would want to instill in the tools.
Okay, thank you. Christoph is asking, did you integrate as well network performance data for predictive maintenance or identifying data stream constraints?
Yeah, I think there's two parts to that. So yes, we have integrated with various test and measurement solutions. So things like Expo and VRV, where we've got automated test capabilities. We're able to integrate those through our APIs. And then in turn use that and the combination of the image data and the inventory data to be able to then look at how that translates from a predictive maintenance perspective. So that's a kind of initial point of view of the portfolio at the moment. So there's some basic capability. It's not like a full area there. It's part of the roadmap as well to develop those capabilities. The integrations all exist, and we can do some basic analysis, but that's part of what we'll be looking to address in the future as well.
Very good, thank you. That sounds quite technical for me, but what is the backend DBMS or data model IQGeo uses?
Yeah, it's a Postgres database that we use. So we've got a very open architecture. We use a Postgres database. It's an application written on Python that's running on Apache with a JavaScript front end, and then we have native deployments for Windows, iOS, and Android for those offline field access. Yeah, so it's all very simple, straightforward, off-the-shelf technology.
Okay. Pedro is asking, is the solution API capable to be integrated with other IT systems? Or do you manage integration, if not, or a tailored software? So it's all about integration.
Yeah, so there's a range of different ways that we can and have integrated, but certainly we've got a number of APIs that we provide. Obviously, being it's the web-based interface, so it's all REST-based communication. So the whole thing is actually there's an extensive set of APIs, but clearly we have a subset of those that are exposed intentionally externally to support integrations. So I mentioned Expo and Viavi, for example, as a set of APIs to support that. They're actually based on the Telemanagement Forum resource inventory standards to make that as simple as possible. And then there's other APIs that you would typically expect to be able to create and manipulate data. Those tickets, as I talked about as an example, there's a set of APIs around the management and creation and update status of tickets. So yeah, that's all possible and feasible.
Okay. And is it needed any kind of software distribution in mobile devices, or is it based on web browser visualization?
So both actually. So you can just run in a web browser on a mobile device, but we do have dedicated iOS, Windows, and Android apps as well, and they're available through the various app stores. So that's depending on what the appropriate deployment mechanism is. That's the approach that we take.
Okay. Concerning, what type of errors or quality issue have customers been able to catch with AI validation? So how does it perform?
Yep, I can take this one, Vincent. So plenty, I would say. From Deepomatic basically, and from the amount of images that they have captured through their customer base and analyzed through their AI model. We talk about issues with connectivity, so a technician that did not, let's say, perform the connection as expected, or the connection did not match with the plan or design that is available in the inventory system. We have missed, for instance, technicians leaving some waste in cabinets or some waste in the equipment location. So these are flagged as well. Essentially, bottom line is any issue that is typically identifiable by a human, let's say, as an issue that should not exist in an equipment, a connection that is faulty, can be the model can be trained to identify in the field. So of course, we would be happy to provide you with more examples offline. You can reach out to us after the session in all our
And actually, I have a follow-up question on that topic, which is around can organization operator measure that in terms of maybe the reduction of need for supervisor to manually check the work? What is the indirect impact of field
Yes.
AI tools? How does it materialize for the control of the quality?
Yes, definitely. So what happens with AI validation is that it is enabling the field technician to automate their checks. So essentially real-time compliance confirmation. So all of this is done without the traditional need, let's say, to go back to the back office for every task to confirm, has this been done correctly? Do we need to change anything, etc. This will definitely reduce the burden that you have on a back office supervisor. So the focus shifts from having to deal with continuous routine complete checks to actually dealing with exceptions, so flagged issues that the AI is validating through errors or warnings, etc. So this is how you effectively can scale your field operations.
Thank you, Anthony. I think I have another question linked to integration. You mentioned, and I'm quoting, an integration between Small World and IQGeo. Is data from an IQGeo mobile device pushed back to Small World as well? Or is it only read-only view of Small World data? How deep does the integration work?
Yeah, very good question. So the simple answer is yes. The data goes back from IQGeo back to Small World. So in a common pattern, depending on the nature of the GIS, the easy way to think about that is that we sort of have a mechanism to be able to bring the data into the IQGeo environment. And then as the field user makes changes, they're usually a package of change, related to a task, a job, what work order, whatever that may be. There'll be some package of change, and that results in a set of structured data that then is returned to the GIS, whether that's Small World based, Esri based, or whatever. In fact, in the case of Small World, we have a dedicated extension to Small World, actually runs inside the Small World environment, and it brings that package of change, and you can actually see embedded inside Small World those changes in an IQGeo context, and then QA those and bring them either individually or kind of en masse into the Small World environment and update the data. Because generally, you want to have some sort of QA process around that, because you generally want to make sure that although the data coming from the field is, what the field user sees is what the network really looks like, you want to make sure that they've not done something inadvertently, or it's to sort of various other standards, etc., etc. So there's that QA process there. So yeah, that is definitely doable.
Thank you, John. Yeah, I think connected to the previous question, Anthony, maybe this is for you, but you mentioned that it changes the role of back office operator. I guess it also changes daily life for field operators. So with that comes the question of how do you transition from one way of working to another? How do you, especially for large organization, what element of training is needed, and how can IQGeo help with that necessary transition, also in internal processes, people training, adaptation of organization? How does it work?
Yeah, very good question. So starting with the training bit, of course, we have different training philosophies that can be applied from the trainer philosophy, or more dedicated, fine-grained trainings. On top of that, what we've seen, and I hope that the audience have seen as well, is the solution is pretty easy to deploy. The user interface is mobile first, so you can quickly pick up the bits and pieces that are needed to get the job done. And with respect to the task that a field technician needs to do, essentially, we don't want to complicate their lives. That's the whole point. Simplicity drives adoption. So the simplicity of the solution, the simplicity of what the task should be and how you need to approach it. So the work to be done, the work that needs to be evidence, essentially, for a good job to be done. This is what we're trying to push with our products and with our philosophy.
Thank you. Yeah, we're getting a bit closer to the end. I have an interesting question I wanted to keep for maybe a form of conclusion. That one is is an interesting one. Which capability would you say distinguishes your product or your solution from all others? So that's the $1 million question.
Yeah, the
You
$1 million
ask
question.
a sales guy just to. So this is the moment to give your best elevator pitch and explain what differentiates you from the others.
Yeah.
And maybe
Yes,
just
yes.
an opportunity just to wrap up a little bit what your solution brings and effectively where you can make a difference.
Yeah. Thanks, Vincent. Yeah, it really is that what we encapsulate as we call native mobility. So that's the real difference, is that we designed our solution to take data out into the field in a very seamless way. So whether that's online or offline, you're able to take that data out, and the end user has the same experience with that data as they do whether they were in the office or not. So they have access to all of the capabilities that are provided, whether that's network tracing to locate a fault for an OTDR, whether that's generating a report related to splicing, whether that's updating data because there's some change in location or change in attribute. That interaction is obviously different for a field user, but it's actually seamless capability regardless of whether they're in the office, in the field, online or offline. And we built that in from the ground up. And that combination with being able to layer that with your existing GIS system of record, existing inventory, we believe provides a really unique combination of capability that's in the market, all wrapped up in that native mobility tag, if you like.
Fantastic. So I guess we will slowly transition towards the end of the session. I don't want to put anybody is late. I think it's been a great exposure to the solution, highlighting how do you address these important pain points. There are quite a few questions we've not been able to address, but as I said, they will be sent to you guys, and I think you'll be able to follow up. If anyone in the audience has additional question, you can reach out to the speaker. I guess a follow-up email might come from you for those who have authorized follow-up communication. Otherwise, write to the council. We can put you in direct contact if you wish. Happy to relay any of your questions. We have a couple of last slides. If you can just bring the last two slides, James. There is one to inform you about next week webinar, which touches upon a very different topic, but nevertheless strategic for many organizations, should they be operator like Eurofiber, but also everyone in the value chain, which is the importance of sustainability, measuring carbon footprint, reporting carbon footprint, which are increasingly taken into account in RFQ and in the business side of the relation between the different stakeholders in our industry. So that session will be on the 10th of July at 2 p.m. And as you mentioned earlier in your comment, we have two physical events, in-person events. One coming soon in October for covering Central Eastern Europe country and how these markets are evolving towards full fiber. So that would be from the Baltic states to Poland, Ukraine, Eastern Europe, down to Romania. We will group everybody during 3 days in Warsaw. So if you're interested, if you want to join us, we'll be very happy to welcome you in Warsaw. And of course, our annual flagship event, the FTTH conference, was in Amsterdam this year. We're already planning for the next event taking place in London, mid-April. So, and of course, in the meantime, there will be, with a rhythm of approximately one webinar per month, the continuation of this series of online events. So with that, we are spot on time. I would like to thank Anthony and Steve Ori very much for your contribution. It was great to have you here. The number of questions really shows the interest of the audience. Thank you very much for your time. And to our audience today, Thank you very much to be so many on the call. There are a few hundreds joining today, so it's a great attendance. Thanks very much. See you online or in person in the weeks and months to come. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.